Whosoever will be saved, before all things it is necessary that he hold the Catholic faith.
Welcome to Veritas et Fus, or Truth and Incense, a podcast on the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, the faith, and the liturgy, which is the public expression of that faith, especially as seen through the Anglican heritage. I'm your host, Father Gregory Seeley, pastor of St. Thomas of Canterbury Church. Today I want to do something a little bit different. I follow some media, probably more than I should, and a number of personalities on the media and their perspectives. And one of them, as I've noticed recently, is the clash between Tucker Carlson, who was a Fox News anchor and has gone on to do his own podcast, and some criticism he's received by the likes of Ben Shapiro and Nick Freitas. And let me begin by saying, first of all, I respect all the people involved in this. I follow Nick Freitas and Ben Shapiro very closely. I'm a lifetime member of Daily Wire, and I can respect their perspective a great deal. I also used to follow Tucker Carlson a great deal when he was on Fox News. I don't follow him as much anymore. Not because I don't appreciate his perspective and such, but his podcasts have become very long, often interviewing people that I don't know and have no real interest in and such. And so I haven't been following him. And I'm not saying that he also hasn't made some statements that are somewhat outrageous. Again, I don't follow him that closely. However, he's made a couple of comments that have come under a lot of criticism by both Ben Shapiro and Nick Freitas that I wanted to address, because I think I understand where he's coming from in this, and I wanted to bring this perspective out. I could, in theory, be wrong, but from what I've observed, I wanted to express this opinion. And this may be kind of a millennial Gen X kind of thing, Ben Shapiro being solidly millennial, Nick Freitas being kind of right on the edge of it, and I being being Gen X. And what Tucker Carlson will do is he will look at situations in countries. He mentioned in Russia, he talked going to Russia, and it's clean, and the grocery stores are nice, and you go to the subways and it's clean and such, and Ben Shapiro at that time was very critical of him for going to Russia and praising Russia. Or even later, he would talk about how you go to certain nations in the East, or even under areas that are under Sharia law, and they say there's no crime there. And to which the two commenters would say, "What do you want, Sharia law in this country?" And I think that's a misunderstanding. And the issue is that the United States, our culture and our society, are measurably worse than they used to be. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and I remember in the very late 80s, early 90s, going down to Venice Beach. I used to go down to Rocky Horror sometimes and when I was much younger, and I would go, and the day we'd go and we'd walk around Hollywood we'd walk around Venice Beach. These areas were clean. You had artists out there doing weird things. People you didn't feel, there was no sense of danger or what have you. You'd go down there, and we would go to the show, and then we'd hang out afterwards. We'd go visit the various Denny's and such, and it was clean and it was fun. It isn't any longer. Our society is measurably worse than it used to be. You used to go to stores or these various restaurants and that kind of stuff, which were available. It was enjoyable and it was clean and it was nice, and it isn't any longer. And one of the things that's happened is that in order to get us to swallow this continual descent of our culture into this kind of morass and of degradation, is they're constantly pointing to other countries and saying, "Oh my gosh, it could be worse. We could be under Sharia law. Oh my gosh, it could be worse. We could be in Russia. And remember the bread lines and that kind of stuff." I think what Tucker Carlson is saying, no, this country is not good. There are real and substantial problems in this country. And the bad guys that we're inventing, you go to Russia, and not to say that he wants to, anybody really say wants to live in Russia more than the US, but there are elements that are better than what we have here. It's clean, it's organized. You don't have crime on the streets. He talks about how, areas under Sharia law or even in the East, how, the crime is down. That's a good thing. Now, I don't think he or anybody else necessarily wants a kind of violent punishment they have of, like, I've heard things of like cutting off your hand if you steal. And I don't think he's advocating for that. But what he is saying is that it didn't used to be like this, and that we are inventing boogeymen. We're inventing areas and saying, well, thank God we don't live there. We live in the US, and not realizing, and it isn't necessarily true that Nick Freitas and Ben Shapiro don't recognize the decline in our culture. I think they do to a point, but I don't know that what Tucker Carlson is pointing out is that as we get worse, we're covering it up by pointing to other countries and saying, well, at least we're not them. And so what he's doing is going to these countries and saying, no, they in fact are better in some ways than we are. We really are becoming a decadent, decadence, not only that, but just the social decline is palpable and measurable from where it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And people who are in their 50s will look at this and will say, this is terrible. We really are declining, and very quickly. And I have to wonder if some of the younger commentaries, again, Ben Shapiro in particular, but Nick Freitas has also weighed in on this, is that this is the frog being boiled alive. We are being told as the water gets hotter and hotter, as things get worse and worse in America, at least we're not somewhere else. And what Tucker Carlson is doing is going to those other places and saying, no, wait a minute. I'm not saying that Sharia law is better than the laws in the United States, but it's clean and there's no crime. And yet our cities are not clean and there is crime. So why don't we look to ourselves rather than talking about how good we are and how bad they are? Why don't we stop and look at the fact that we're not good? The U.S. is in severe decline. It's in severe social decline, in severe moral decline. It's in decline everywhere. And I think that really is what he's trying to point out. I don't believe he wants to live under Sharia law. I don't believe he wants to live in Russia. I believe he wants to point out that the United States is not it is not, we are not where we should be. We're not where we were. And there are some of us who alive today in America who remember when this country was a much better place. And so to say, well, at least we're not Russia, or at least it's not under Sharia law, is a cop-out. And I think we need to realize that we need to be far more vocal and far more active in bringing to light the real and measurable decline in our society over, again, decade by decade, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. And I think that is what Tucker Carlson is trying to do. I do not believe he's advocating for us to become like Russia or to adopt Sharia law or anything else. He is simply saying that the cultures that we are currently calling boogeymen, to say, well, at least we're not so-and-so, are in many ways in better shape than the society we're currently living in. And that we need to look very carefully at ourselves and not try and put ourselves up against other cultures, because we are in no position to do so. So that, again, is what I think Tucker Carlson is trying to do. And think about that. And I'd be happy to hear any thoughts on that matter. But as I'm watching this, I'm saying, I don't think he's advocating for these other cultures. I think he's simply pointing out the decline, measurable decline that he has seen and I have seen in our society since we've been alive.